Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Dr. Janice Hooker Fortman with Relationship Matters TV. I hope everyone is having a beautifully blessed morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Well, I always start on my soapbox, and I'm not changing yet. And what is my soapbox about? You know what it's about. It's about COVID. Okay. Now, so today I heard that COVID is something we are just going to have to live with. So I guess it's just like the flu, maybe. Every year we are going to have to get a booster in order to keep from getting it, I guess, or just if you do get it, it won't be so severe. However, what they do say is to wear your mask. You should wear your mask when you're in a closed setting. Now, I understand when you're in a restaurant, of course, you can't eat with your mask on, although I did see a mask and it had like a hole or something like that, but it kind of looked a little weird. But anyway, people, I guess I'm just going to have to come off of my soapbox and just don't get on it again because we're going to be living with COVID for the rest of our lives. But you just really don't want to get it, so wear your mask. And then, of course, there's the monkeypox. Can't wear your mask as far as monkeypox is concerned. But everybody out there, just, be vigilant, be careful. Just do whatever it takes to keep from getting either one of these. So now I shall step down off of my soapbox and talk about this remarkable young lady that is my guest today. I met her on a cruise and we just clicked. And she's just a beautiful, beautiful person. And of course, she has a beautiful first name. And we'll talk about her first name later. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit about who I am bringing on today. Her name is Janice. Isn't that a beautiful name? Mrs. Janice Williams. She is a clinical social worker. And I'm going to ask her to explain to me and to you what all of these initials are behind her name. MSSALISW-S, all of that. She's going to explain to us all what that means. But anyway, she's been practicing in the field of social work for over 45 years. And she doesn't look a day over 45, which I don't know when she started. She must have been 5 or something. But presently, she is in private practice. She's a clinician and provides clinical services to nursing homes, various mental health and substance abuse programs. And she's been a child welfare trainer for 25 years. She lends her expertise to foster caregivers. She's a child welfare trainer. She fosters caregivers, adoptive parents, child welfare staff. She's she's everything. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about what she does. She does everything. I don't know how she finds the time, but she has so much expertise and so much feelings for what she does. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on to you this lovely woman with this lovely name. Hello.
Hi,
Janice Williams.
how are you?
I am doing great. What I want you to do is move over just a little bit to, yeah, we want to see the whole of beautiful you.
Is that good? Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
we want to see the whole of beautiful you.
Oh, thank you.
So now you had all these initials behind your name. So tell us what all of that means.
Okay, first of all, let me just say what an honor it is, Dr. Fortman, to be on your show. And I've been excited ever since we inked this deal. So basically, I am a clinical social worker. I have a master's in social science administration, hence the MSSA. The LISW means you are licensed by the state of Ohio to practice, and it indicates that you are an independent clinician. You need no supervision. You can hang your shingle anywhere. You can do private practice. It's the highest level that social workers attain. Not to be confused with the PhD as you have, which is research, but for clinicians, for practicing clinicians, the LISW is the tier, the top tier. And the dash S just means I can supervise folks and help more people get jobs and do what I do.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. That's really great. So I know you've been doing this for 45 years, and I know you only maybe 42, but but what did you do before you became a clinical social worker?
This is the only career that I have had. This has been my lifelong career from completing college in 1976 with my master's. There's so many areas and so many ways that you can help others. That's why people say social work, oh, that sounds boring. Au contraire. You can work with criminal justice, you can work with mental health, you can work with the aged, you can work with substance abuse, you can work with people in just about any capacity where the human spirit needs healing and direction. So this has been my lifelong career, and I'm still in it. I'm still loving it.
So tell me about the first time you felt, okay, so you went into this, and this is the only career that you've had. Tell me the first time you felt that this was for you.
Okay, that's really easy. So anyone who knows me knows that I am a talker and a singer and a singer and a talker. So I love to talk. And as a child, that was not always a good thing. I got my behind warmed many times for talking in class. I love people. Just you and I met on a Soul Train cruise. So I've always had the type of personality where I meet people, I engage with people, and I'm very empathetic. For whatever reason, people tell me their problems. They open up to me. I've had dentists tell me their life story, and they have me in a gag, and I can't say anything, but they tell me things they shouldn't tell me. So it was always a personality trait. I didn't know for sure as a young person, but I knew I wanted to help others. I know I have the gift of gab, and I think it was divine intervention that led me to this career. And I've never looked back, and I am no ways tired.
All righty, all righty. So now also, you were an adjunct professor. So for us for my audience who don't know what adjunct what that is, tell me about that.
Okay, so adjunct professors are instructors at universities who are hired because of their expertise in a particular field. So if you think about academia, there are individuals who have a lot of theoretical knowledge, as we call them, book smarts, but universities recognize the need for individuals who have both. So they look for experienced clinicians, people who can relate, who can teach students not just the theoretical, but the practical. So I started as an adjunct professor early 90s and finally stopped about 2006 with Case Western Reserve. And then I did 2 years at Cleveland State. So you're a professor, but you have a lot of practical experience. And you share those anecdotal experiences with your students. You inspire them, and you can tell them what it's really like beyond what the textbook says.
Oh, okay, okay. And you also work with foster caregivers. Now, is a foster caregiver is that different from like a foster parent? Yeah.
Yeah, the correct term, you know how nomenclature changes by the decade.
Okay.
When I started in the 70s, they were foster parents, but now they are foster caregivers because
Oh,
their role has been expanded. But Dr. Fortman, can I tell you how I started with that journey? Because it's pretty interesting. It's
yes.
very interesting. So I was in graduate school in this 1974, and as you might imagine, being a Black woman, there were very few Black women, Black men at Case Western Reserve University at that time. So I found myself being in most of my classes the only Black person, which never bothered me because I've always had this sense of I know who I am, I know what I'm here for. I wasn't the least bit intimidated. In one of my classes in 1974, as a freshman in grad school, one professor made a statement, and this was in a child welfare class. He indicated that little Black boys, if they were not adopted by the age of 6, that they were destined to age out of the foster care system because no one wanted to adopt little Black boys. Did that get to me? My mother used to say certain things would burn her craw. I don't know where my craw is, but it burned it. Okay. I was furious. That made no sense to me. And I very nicely challenged and asked him what was the documentation to back that up. And the only thing he could tell me was that's what the data shows. The data shows that little Black boys remain in limbo. Most of them are not placed for adoption. Most of them age out. I did not accept that then, and I don't accept it now. However, because he made that statement, that put a burning flame in me to do something about it. So I began to talk to others, which is something I always do. I found people who agreed with me that there has to be another reason, but it cannot be because little Black boys are not adoptable. I have a younger brother. He was the apple of my eye. That was just not going to fly. So I convinced two people who were about 20 years my senior in the field of social work that we needed a Black adoption agency. We needed to prove them wrong. And they were visionaries. They believed in me. In 1976, I got my master's. I went to work in my field of clinical social work, but I kept working on my dream. And 2 years later, we opened the doors to Harambee Services to Black Families, the first African American adoption agency in Cleveland. Um, we were very successful because we used recruitment as the tool. The flaw in their premise was that little Black boys weren't adopted. The reality was it wasn't that they weren't adoptable, but the community did not know. The community did not know these children were waiting. The community didn't know all the resources. So we went out of our way to do very creative things, like put flyers of cute little Black boys, big head, skinny, buck tooth, glasses, all kinds, shapes, sizes, colors. We put them on flyers in grocery bags in grocery stores. We went to churches on Sunday and showed little carousels of waiting Black children. We put them on TV. We had a show called A Child's Waiting. And before long, Dr. Fortman, our phones were jumping off the hook. People wanted to know, how do I become a foster parent? Can I adopt? We let them know that there were monies out there. We let them know you didn't have to be married. You didn't have to be wealthy. You didn't have to have a big house. You could be a renter. Um, we were very successful to the point that we were soon placing Black girls, white boys, white girls, handicapped children, all the children who had been deemed unadoptable. We were able to show that it's about recruitment. It's about informing the community. It's about letting people know what resources are available. So I did that for about 2 years. And once we took off and we were successful, I turned my attentions to other areas. And Harambee did last for about 25 years, I'm proud to say.
Wow, that is wonderful. That 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 is awesome. What you were doing. So, is there? I know you said that was 25 years. So, do they still have um, an adoption agency in
You know,
Cleveland that's focused? You
I,
know.
I am actually not certain, Dr. Fortman, if there are other termed Black adoption agencies, but I do know, since I still work in child welfare, that a lot of the premises that we set, a lot of the precedents that we set, because I do training, so more and more agencies are incorporating. I actually write workshops. I've written over 40 workshops where I train. I do this now. I go to various counties and I train professionals, adoptive parents, foster parents, how to work with children who've been abused and neglected. What are the special needs of minorities? What are the special needs of all children who've been traumatized? And you had asked earlier about the distinction. So a foster caregiver, formerly called an foster parent, is one who is charged with the temporary care of children who hopefully will be reunited with their parents once the presenting issues have been resolved. And those issues could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be substance abuse, it could be a myriad of things. But the overarching goal is that the foster caregiver not only provides for that child, but becomes a role model for that parent. Because what good is it to send them back to their parents if nothing has changed? And there's still a lot of work to do in that area. So I train foster caregivers on how to understand their role, how to handle the unique behavioral and emotional problems. I train staff as to how to work with the birth families. There's a lot of work to be done. And I do that several times a month, and I travel doing that.
Oh my goodness. You know, Maxine says you are a blessing to our community.
What a nice, very nice thing to say. Thank you so much.
But you really are. I mean, you really are. It's just so wonderful, and I can see the passion that you have for it, and the heart that you have for it. That's amazing. And so now you work with foster caregivers, and you also work with adoptive parents.
Yes, they typically take the classes together, and I just recently trained staff. So everybody needs to be involved, especially with the unique needs of African American children. We can't treat children as if all of their experiences are the same. They are not. And we need to recognize their unique needs and celebrate culture and celebrate diversity and fight against racism. I also teach anti-racism. That's very important to me. That's very different from diversity and inclusion. It's anti-racism. And I also taught that at Case Western Reserve for many years.
So you touched on something that I just want to explore just a little bit. And you said the unique needs of African American children.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
I mean, why do you say that there are unique needs for African American children, especially as far as being a foster child and an adopted child?
Okay. Well, let's start with the fact that information that I received back in the 70s about African American children languishing in foster care until they age out if they're not adopted. Sadly, we haven't made much of a dent in that statistic. Certainly it's not as grim as when they first presented it, because now we're aware. But if you think about it, as an African American child, you have the stigma of racism that follows us wherever we go. The other factor is that African American children are disproportionately overrepresented in the child welfare system. And that, again, is directly related to institutional racism. Everything is related to institutional racism. So if you already start out with that target on your back, and then you have the unfortunate situation of having family issues where your family is either unable to care for you, where there may be substance abuse, there may be mental health needs, there may be serious financial needs. All of those culminate into a real understanding of the struggles for African American people and our children. One cannot be colorblind and be effective in working with children if you don't understand their struggles, the struggles of their parents, what things they have to overcome, what things they need. So it's not just nice, it is mandatory that anybody in child welfare understand institutional racism, because they can have implicit bias themselves and not even be aware.
Oh my goodness. Uh, uh, Janice, I mean, you're getting these accolades from Nancy Jones. She says it's fantastic work, that Janice has the heart for caring for people in the community. That's just, that's so. So how do you in private practice? Do
Yes.
you have? Now I know you work with different organizations and institutions, but do you also work with individual people, like mothers, daughters, fathers, sons, families? So you do that also?
All of the above, Dr. Fortman, all of the above. So I have a private practice, and in my private practice, there are males, there are females, there are married couples, there are couples contemplating marriage, there are seniors such as myself. I have a very diverse population. My clients are Black, my clients are white, my clients are Asian, my clients are young, old. I have everybody but the family dog. So,
And
um,
after this, they might start talking to you about the family dog.
exactly. So,
So,
so
let me ask you this: in your private
mhm,
practice with, I would say, senior citizens,
yes.
what is that about?
Okay. Actually, most of my work with senior citizens, I have a few now, but the bulk of my 45 years, I was a clinician in nursing homes. I would actually go into nursing homes and work with populations. Um, there's a lot of depression among our elders. There's a lot of depression among people who are in nursing homes. Unfortunately, today, and I've seen it change over decades, everybody in a nursing home is not old. There are young people with kidney dysfunction. There are people with just every malady you can think of who are unable to care for themselves. So depression is high. I also work with the Alzheimer population with dementia. And when I have clients with dementia and Alzheimer's, if they're not cognitively able to speak to their depression, I work on giving them life and hope. So I use spirituality a lot. I stopped working in nursing homes at COVID because we could no longer go in. But when I would go in with my Alzheimer's and dementia patients, I start singing groups. Janice, I don't know if you remember from the cruise, but I like to sing. And I find that music is universal. So I would go in a nursing home, wheel out folks in wheelchairs. We'd start singing Lean on Me and Amen and Frank Sinatra. Music is a great equalizer. It's a great mood lifter. So, with those who couldn't cognitively work on their depression, I would work on enlightening their spirits, hearing their stories, looking at their family pictures, hearing the same stories over and over again, and acting as if I'd heard them for the first time. Just engaging and letting them know how valuable and how important they were. I miss my seniors. So that's kind of what nursing home work looks like.
Okay. And with married couples,
Oh,
do you
yes.
do marriage counseling?
Yes.
The counseling before they get married to see if they really
Yes.
should.
I
Have you
do.
ever have you ever told a couple that you all really are not ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Here's what I do. I try not to be quite that blunt, but my
Okay.
goal is to always help you see what I see. And there really have been times, I mean, this is the real world, where there's so much toxicity that we can't resolve that in sessions. Many times I'll see that one person needs more help. Marriage counseling, contrary to popular belief, is not the format when you have someone with a serious mental illness. Marriage counseling is for people who are reasonably healthy, who have the capacity to work through their problems. So if I am in a situation where it's clear that one person needs far more and their issues cannot be resolved as a couple, I will suggest, especially if there's safety issues, especially if there's violence. There have been times when I've had to cut off my camera because if things get agitated or whatever, all kinds of situations exist. And if you're fighting and I can't redirect you, then we have to cease this. I'm not watching this for, what is it, WWF, a knockdown, drag out fight. That's not my purpose. So there are times when people have to go to their corners or rethink their relationships.
Okay. Now, one thing that I really want to talk about when we come, I have to do a quick commercial. But one thing you told me when we met on the cruise, and it just kind of, it kind of blew my mind when we started talking about mothers. And when you were telling me about your different clients, and we started talking about mothers who choose their men over their daughters, and the negative impact that it had on the daughters' lives, all kinds of negative things. And so this is what, and I thought at the time when you were telling me that this is, well, it's very seldom discussed, number one, but number two, I just really didn't think it was that prevalent. And you were telling me how prevalent it was. So when we return, Janice, I love to say that name.
Me too.
When we return, Janice, that's what I really want to talk about. And when I talked with some of my audience, they were, they did like I did, the mouths dropped open because they really didn't think that this was an issue. So when we come back, I really want us to have a conversation about that.
Okay.
All right.
Do it.
Okay. So we'll be right back right after this. Hi, we are back. And both of those books, my book, The Secrets to How Not to Throw Mama from the Train, wait, wrong hand, right, right there. And the book, how can I forget the name of the next the books? Rain Must Fall. Well, anyway, both of those books are available on Amazon.com. And that's the other sponsor of my show, so which I will do another shout out for her a little bit later. But I am so excited and just so, not excited, I guess I could say interested in what Janice is going to talk about next. So let me bring Janice back on.
Am I sitting correctly now?
Janice, yeah,
Okay.
okay. That's better. Now we can see your beautiful face.
Oh, you're so sweet.
So now this to me was very serious, and you know, I would read about this or maybe see something about this on TV, but I just thought, you know, this is every now and then. But tell me, number one, how prevalent this is, but how you found out that this was something that is prevalent.
I would say very sadly, Dr. Fortman, from the beginnings in mental health, and that would have been post 1976, as a clinical social worker, dealing with families, dealing with parents who have lost their children, dealing with children and young adults who talk to me about suicidal struggles and ideations. This has been going on for a very long time. So I've always seen it. I've seen it in clinical practice. I've seen it in with substance abuse, but probably where it became most glaringly apparent, I retired from Cleveland schools after 17 years. I didn't want to retire. We were laid off, so there was no other option. And I need to just throw in, unfortunately, due to that decision, Cleveland had the horrible distinction of being number one in suicide. Not Chicago, where you're from, not New York City, not California. Cleveland was number one in child suicides from at least 2015. I'm not sure where we are now. We're probably still in the top 5, but they laid off social workers in 2014. And it was probably the worst thing they ever could have done. But I remember vividly, in working with children in Cleveland Public Schools, how many times, especially with teenagers, there's one particular incident that is forever cemented in my mind. It was a Friday evening. And if you know, just about with anything, everything goes wrong on a Friday evening, particularly in schools. Friday is before the weekend. Everybody wants to go home. The teachers want to go home. By the end of the day, the buildings are usually deserted, unless you're a school social worker or a very hardworking teacher, and there are many. I remember a young lady that I had been talking to since after lunch, and she was having problems with her mom. And I offered to call her mom, as I usually would do, and try to work out their issues. And she said to me, my mom says that I'm interfering with her relationship with her boyfriend. And this is the best man she's ever had. He has a job, and she's not going to allow me to ruin that relationship. And she doesn't want me to come home. And I remember this young lady was on the swim team. I want to say she was about 15 years old. And I said to her, well, can you go to a grandmother's house? Let me have a chance to talk to your mother. I'm still not wanting to just accept at face value that this mother was rejecting her child. I'm still wanting to believe that there's another side to this. And when I talk to the mom, we can work things out. And she says, no, my grandmother's an alcoholic. No, there's no one. I called her mother, and her mother affirmed everything she had said to me. She said, you don't know how hard it is for me to get a man. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know how my daughter runs everybody away. She said she was in her 30s. She deserved a life. And she said, isn't there some place that you can take her? And I said, if you do that, ma'am, you are abandoning your child. I said, oh, there's some place I can take her, but you're going to be charged with abandonment. You have to consent to some kind of treatment, some kind of help. Can you think of some place she can go until you calm down and she calms down? And she said she can't come here. She said her man told her that he didn't want to see her. This is a Friday. And if my memory serves me, this has been quite a while ago. There was a teacher in the building. We call 696 Kids. That's our local Department of Children and Family Services. They gave this teacher permission to take this child because otherwise she knew the teacher. They had a good relationship. Who knows where she would have ended up that night. But her mother told me, she said, no, she cannot come home. She can't run this man away.
So this was one instance,
That
but
was one, but there were many, many others with different variants. That was that particular variant. Um, Many other times we would find that there'd be other issues. There might be children who are neglected, children who no one can get in touch with the parent because the parent has actually moved out. I had a lot of situations where young teens were living by themselves because mom went to live with the boyfriend. Mom would make sure sometimes, some mothers would make sure there was food, etc. Some didn't. But what they had in common was that the priority was that man instead of that child. But please don't misunderstand this. I am not saying that this was the norm. I'm saying this absolutely was not the norm, but I saw it more times than I wanted to.
and how did you find out? Did you know, with your different cases, the daughters would tell you that?
Yes,
Um,
pretty much
that's how you would
they would
find out.
say. They would say, my mother doesn't love me, or my mother's boyfriend is more important. Sometimes they would tell me that the boyfriend would actually make sexual advances and the mother would not believe them. Oh, yes. There were times when girls would tell me they had been molested or raped, and that automatically was a mandated call to
Right.
protective services. But that didn't automatically mean that that child was removed from the home. Did you hear that?
I heard that.
Yes. A
I heard
call, a call doesn't necessarily mean I fancy myself a boxer without the skills because I would literally have to fight to get children protected in some cases, not in all. Nothing is 100%, but far too often.
Wow. Wow. So now, is this is this something that happens in diverse populations, or
Yes, yes. Most, I really want your viewing audience to know that we've been lied to. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect cuts across all socioeconomic stratas. I have had the fortune of working in higher echelon communities, and I can tell you this, in some instances, I think those children are worse off because there was a period in my career where I supervised other school social workers in some of our higher income communities. And people who are from Cleveland will know if I mention Westlake, Hudson, just a few. What I found was that those communities with low minority populations and high incomes did not want school social workers. And once again, I had to fight because I am a mandated reporter. And they would say things to me like, oh, we can't call Department of Children and Family Services on that family. Do you know who that father is? Oh, she's on our board. Oh, that's the head of them. I don't care. I am a mandated reporter. So guess what? That little experiment of having social workers in the high echelon communities died out quickly. So by no means is this only a problem of minorities. Is this only a problem of the poor? This cuts across all cultures, income, socioeconomic levels, and it's probably worse because they are protected by lawyers and money and titles.
so why isn't this, I went online, Googled, and I tried to find some statistics about this, because it's a lot of about sexual abuse, and but there were no statistics about mothers who choose their husbands or boyfriends or whatever over their daughters, as far as when you talk about, sexual abuse or mental abuse, or, mental health issues, substance abuse, um, why do you think that is?
Well, again, everything, in my opinion, goes back to institutional racism. When you are not valued as a people, as I was listening to you, you know what my thought was? Dr. Janice Hooker Fortman is going to write a book about this, and I'll help her. We can co-write this book. So, first of all, why don't we hear about it? We have to be valued. We have to be valued. I find that people are willing to tell their stories. One of the agencies that I'm a consultant for presently is a wonderful program called People, Places, and Dreams. And this agency services clients who are recovering. They're recovering from various addictions. They may have dual diagnoses of mental health, and so much is revealed. I have a saying that everybody with a mental illness does not have a substance abuse problem, but everyone with a substance abuse problem does have a mental illness. And what you find when you hear the stories, as people explain to you how their life took a turn with drugs and alcohol and abuse, you will find a lot of common denominators of abuse and neglect. And that's where you hear these stories over and over again. And again, that's not to say that everyone does it, but that's to say that it happens far more often than the average person would know, because it's a shameful topic. This is not something. I had a client reveal to me yesterday that his father tried to solicit him sexually, and he's a grown man. He's
What?
a professional. He's carried this inside for years, and he just revealed this to me yesterday. And he's now wondering if this has something to do why he has difficult relationships with people. And of course it does. So many people don't talk about their story. There's stigma, there's shame, there's pain. A lot of reasons why.
So how do you build relationships with your clients? Uh, how, okay, like you said, this young man came out to you as far as what had been happening in his life.
Well, what happened is when he was a child, he is now a grown man,
Okay.
successful, but he's never healed. And this is the first time he's shared it.
And I can imagine that in your training that you're able for people to, I guess, to tell you their really deepest, darkest stories. In other words, okay, let me phrase this differently. They might come to you for a specific issue that they think that they're having, but
Exactly.
then what happens with you, what will happen is that you will get to the bottom of why they have this, because we talked about a little bit about the impact, especially that it has on daughters and their mothers.
Right.
They're not supposed to be your safe space.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what is the impact that you've seen on daughters, as far as when they come to you and they tell you about this particular issue?
Well, I think first of all, we need to recognize that the mother daughter relationship, actually, the mother relationship with the child is usually the first relationship of our lives. And I love fathers, and they play a very, very important role. But if you think about from the impact of birth, from the time that child is laid on your chest, if that's the case, usually that very first relationship is with the mother. So if you're a girl and your first experiences of being loved, having love defined, having your worth verified and validated comes from a mother figure. So where there's interruption in that relationship, where there's missing components, where a daughter may not necessarily pick up on that affection or that validation or that approval, that whole cycle of trust and attachment and the building of self-esteem is altered from day one. What happens is, as girls, as women, we look to our mothers initially to show us who we are and who we should be. Now, over time, that is tempered with experiences and choices, etc. But if there is something missing in terms of that validation, that approval, that affection, there can be lifelong implications. And I see it in adults all the time, who talk about that later. They may come to me talking about work issues, or they may come to me about their marital situation. And somehow, as they become more comfortable with me, and you had asked me earlier, how do I bridge this? You bridge it by listening, and you listen empathetically. This is not a business that you can fake. If you don't care, people know it. They have a radar. They can tell when you care. And once that transference of genuine concern and care, people feel safe and the floodgates open. But that mother-daughter relationship initially is where we find ourselves, and our first indication of self-esteem, first building block, happens through that relationship, or not.
Okay. I got to take another quick commercial, and a question has come through. And we're going to see about how you answered this particular question from one of my viewers. But this will be just a quick commercial. As a matter of fact, I'm going to run the commercial, the book name that I forgot. I'm going to run her commercial again. So we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
We are back with Janice Williams, a clinical social worker, and we're talking about, I gotta find this question. We're talking about the impact of something that happens between mothers and daughters, the impact of when mothers really choose men, their men over their daughters. But this question came in from Gwen Dunbar. She says, working in education, I noticed that many people who work as public servants, the police, teachers, social workers, and the courts, and parents tend to blame each other rather than working together. How do you think this can be resolved?
Okay, that's an excellent question, Gwen. I believe the easiest way to resolve that is for everyone to understand the role that they play. None of us can do this without each other. When I worked in the schools, the teachers were important to me. I was important to them. The truant officers, the guidance counselors, my daughter is a guidance counselor. They're valuable. Everyone has a role. I think where we blame each other and where we fail to work together is when we start thinking that one role is more important than the other. As a professional, you can only do what you do well, but you need to form linkages and coordinate services on behalf of children. So once you recognize and respect everybody's role and realize that we are all working in the best interest of the child, and you make that the goal, and people identify how they can use their expertise for the same goal, that's how you stop the conflict. And that's where you focus on what's really important, and that's the needs of the children.
So let me ask you one more question. Um, how do you, okay, so you are in this field, and people, come to you, for help and and assistance and coaching and counseling. But how can we, as the general public, how can we identify if we see something like this, and what do we do? I know in the educational system you are designated reporters,
Exactly.
but the general population, what can
Yes.
we do?
Okay. First of all, everyone is a mandated reporter. If you have knowledge that a child is being abused or neglected, you are a mandated reporter. The only difference is persons like me who have a license can lose our jobs if we don't. But every single person has a responsibility to save a child. It is heartbreaking, Dr. Fortman, when I hear adults tell me that there were adults who knew that they were being abused. There were family members who knew, there were teachers who knew, there were neighbors who knew, and no one did anything. Every human being, every adult is a mandated reporter. Now, this is not as simple as it sounds. You heard me say that there were times when I had to put on boxing gloves. I'll keep it real. You can call and report child abuse and neglect, but there's some things you need to know. First of all, you need to know that you do not need proof. If you suspect, and especially if a child tells you, I'm being abused, I'm being hurt, I'm being molested, you do not need proof. It is the job of the Child Welfare Protective Service agency to determine if it's true. That is not your job. Your job is to alert. Either a child told you or you see something that concerns you. Now, you may see something that concerns you and it may turn out to be invalid. So you have a right, if you report something, to ask that you be anonymous. That is your right. You may think, well, I don't want to get into it with my neighbors. If I call child services and then the way people are today, they come and want to shoot me, want to fight me. You don't have to identify yourself. All you have to do is tell them who the child is, who you suspect is the abuser, and where to find them. And then it's their job to either validate or disclaim whatever it is. And you do not have to give your name. Now, the other part of that is there are times when you may report and they may not want to accept it. And I ran into this a lot as a licensed professional social worker. And there are a lot of reasons why. There are a lot of reasons why they may not want to accept this. But what was important to me is knowing that I would not make a call if I did not feel that a child was in danger. It is very it's a mean thing to do, to make a frivolous call or to try to get revenge. If you're calling, it needs to be authentic. It needs to be truthful. So the one thing that people can do, and I don't know how this works state to state, but in Ohio, if you report child abuse, suspected child abuse, ask for a call ID number. They'll tell you, yes, okay, thank you very much. But without a call ID number, you have no idea if they accepted that case. They can say, thank you very much for telling us this, and there's no action. When you ask for the call ID number, that enables you to call back in a few days and say, was this case accepted? Is someone following up? And if you feel that they're not, and this child is still in danger, you can contact the police, or you can be, as I often was, a thorn in somebody's side. Because if I felt a child was truly in danger, I just didn't stop. There were times when I did whatever I had to do. And that meant If I had to give somebody's name to a television station, it happened. And I would say things like, may I have the correct spelling of your name? Because when this hits the paper, when this goes on TV, I want to make sure they knew I talked to you. But that's just me. But we have to protect children. It's happened so much, and people just, well, maybe somebody else will say something. I don't want to get involved. Listen, once you know, you are involved. Once that child confides in you, you have an obligation.
You so much, and Gwendolyn Dunbar says, thanks. I pray that your words become a reality. So I would say, in closing, that wherever you are in the world, to contact whoever you're supposed to contact as far as the issues that we're talking about here. As we only got, what, 3 minutes? Sandy Barney Ennis says, in every neighborhood, a social agency is needed that people can visit anonymously, that will help strengthen our complex communities, especially in our day's society. Thank you so much, Sandy, for saying that. And thank you so much, Janice,
It's my
for
pleasure.
being a guest and bringing this forth to us, and really emphasizing that what we need to do is protect our children, because our children, they always say, which is true, the children are our
Future.
future. They are our
Yes.
future,
Yes.
and mothers and daughters, as just as Janice said, and Janice number 2 said, number 1, I'm number 2 now. That mother-daughter relationship is the very first relationship we have. It affects everything. It affects our personal relationships. It affects our professional relationships. And if that there is something that's happening that should be, be a designated reporter. So great conversation. Sharon Rose says, you are my hero.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fortman, for having me. I love to talk. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to say a lot of things that I've been wanting to say. What a wonderful show you have. What a wonderful person you are. And I was just drawn to you instantly because I thought you were a model. And I just wanted to ask you what agency you model for.
Well, for those who don't know, and I don't have my crown here, but I do have this. I have my pen that I can show people. But I am Miss Senior Illinois
Yay!
2022. And I
Congratulations.
will be, thank you, and I will be competing in the Miss Senior America pageant in
Oh,
September
right.
in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
All right.
So
You've won
hopefully,
already. I feel sorry for your competition. They should just surrender now.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Janice.
Thank
I,
you.
I,
It's
I
been my
really appreciate
pleasure.
you for this, and bringing this to the forefront. And I'm going to have you back again.
Please
And
do.
when I have you back again, I want to. You hear me?
No, I didn't. I missed that. Can you repeat that?
I'm going to have you back,
Okay.
and I want you to sing.
Oh, no. Uh-oh. Now, you may not be as pleased with the outcome. At your own risk, girl, but I'll do it. I'll do
Okay.
it. Okay.
You have a beautiful, blessed rest of your day.
So much. And to your
Thank you
listening
so much
audience,
again.
God bless you and protect the children.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank all of you who were able to view this conversation. And this will be on YouTube. So, and it's so very important, and I'm saying this, just go to Dr. Janice Hooker Fortman on the YouTube page and tell people about it. Tell people so that they can get this very important information. Thank all of you for coming. Remember, there are all kinds of relationships and all kinds of relationship matters. See you again next week. Bye-bye.